Good evening. I want to talk about something that nobody is talking about. And I think nobody is talking about it because nobody wants to have the conversation. There are no female hibachi chefs. I don't mean very few. I don't mean underrepresented. I mean, I have been to hibachi restaurants my entire life, on both coasts, in multiple states, and I have never, not once, been cooked for by a woman. Not one, zero. It's a statistical anomaly so perfect, it has to mean something. Now, before one of the three women in my audience go to send me an email, and I know they exist somewhere, there's probably one in Portland. She went to culinary school. She's excellent. She does the onion volcano with a kind of quiet fury that commands respect. I'm not talking about her. I'm talking about the industry pipeline because that's where the answer lives. Hear me out. There are three professions in America that are so fundamentally, so structurally, almost aggressively male that women's absence isn't a diversity problem. It's a geological feature of the landscape. Coal mining, underwater welding, and hibachi chef. And I want you to notice what those three things have in common. They are all jobs where there is a non-trivial chance you don't come home. Coal mining, obvious. Underwater welding, you are literally welding metal at the bottom of the ocean, which is one of those sentences that sounds fine until you actually think about what it means. And hibachi, you are working with open flame in an enclosed dining room, inches from strangers, performing the same choreographed routine every 45 minutes for a table of 12 who have been drinking since 4 p.m., and one of whom will try to catch the shrimp in their mouth. The pipeline is self-selecting. The men who become hibachi chefs are not men who chose hibachi. They are men who looked at coal mining, looked at underwater welding, and said, actually, I want to be warm. I want music. I still want the mortal peril, but I'd like a sake bomb nearby. And here's the other thing I'll say, and I'm going to say it with full awareness of what I'm saying. A female hibachi chef simply doesn't land the same way. And I'm actually not sorry. There is a specific gravitational pull to a 50-year-old man in a paper hat who hasn't made eye contact with a customer since 2009, who flips a spatula with the energy of someone performing a ritual they no longer believe in but cannot stop. That's the product. That's what you're paying for. You're paying for the ghost of a man who once had ambitions and now makes a volcano out of an onion 3 times a night. A woman doing that same routine carries a completely different energy. She looks competent. She looks intentional. She looks like she chose this. And that ruins it. The entire appeal of hibachi is the quiet tragedy of a man who is exceptionally skilled at something he has grown to despise. You can feel it. That's the seasoning. Which brings me to the thing I've been thinking about a lot. We talk about occupational mental health. Dental hygienists. Did you know dental hygienists have one of the highest suicide rates of any profession? It's true. Something about spending your entire career 6 inches from strangers' open mouths, cleaning up after a dentist who gets all the credit. Being aggressively cheerful, about plaque. The proximity to suffering without the authority to fix it. It breaks something in a person eventually. But nobody is talking about hibachi chefs. And I have to imagine that the numbers are worse. Because at least a dental hygienist gets to go home. At least nobody is asking a dental hygienist to also entertain them while they work. Nobody is sitting in the chair going, okay, but can you also do a little drum solo with the instruments and then flip a tooth into my mouth from 3 feet away while my Uncle Steve tries to film it for Instagram? The hibachi chef has to perform joy. Every single service in front of strangers who are often drunk, who will say, do the volcano again, like it's a reasonable request to make of another human being. 5 years of that, 10 years of that. You start to see it in their eyes around year 3. Something goes quiet behind there. Yeah, they're still flipping the shrimp. The shrimp always lands. But they're not there anymore. They're somewhere else. Somewhere peaceful. Somewhere without a teppanyaki grill and a table of 14 celebrating a birthday that didn't need to be celebrated at a hibachi restaurant. I just want someone to check on them. That's all I'm saying. Go to your local hibachi restaurant this week. Look your chef in the eyes. Not in a weird way. Just acknowledge him. Let him know you see him. Not the performance, him. He's been doing the Onion Volcano for 11 years. He deserves that much. Welcome back to the Taylor Moore Show. Welcome back. Welcome back, folks. Yeah, that was a monologue I was awfully passionate about, and I'm glad I was able to share it with you. We have a great show in store today. I took a different approach with the monologue. I wanted to bring the same intellectual rigor to bear, but on a topic that wasn't something you're always hearing about. Iran, gay flight attendants, the mainstream media stuff. And boy, we just have a lot of good stuff in store today. Obviously, we talked about hibachi chefs, but we're also talking about some interesting stuff in the news. A quadriplegic charged for murder. OnlyFans owner dies. The missile strike on the Iranian school. A coffee shop using AI to track its workers and customers. Then I'm going to tell a little personal anecdote about the time I met someone with a dissociative identity disorder who had been trafficked. I'll leave it there. It's quite an interesting story. It ties into Project Monarch with the CIA. All that stuff converges. And then finally, I'm going to end talking about fear and the illusion of it. But first, a word from our sponsor. Flipside. You got into this for the love of the craft, the precision, the fire, the moment when the spatula connects with the shrimp and the shrimp becomes a projectile and the table gasps like you've performed a miracle. You were good at this. You are still good at this. That's almost the worst part. Because somewhere between year 2 and year 3, something changed. The Onion Volcano stopped feeling like artistry and started feeling like a sentence. The birthday song, you've sung it 11,000 times. You know all the verses, including the one nobody else knows because you've had 11,000 opportunities to memorize it. You go home smelling like teppanyaki and quiet desperation, and your wife says, "How is work?" And you say, "Fine," because there is no word in the English language for what work was. You are not okay, and nobody is asking. Flipside is the world's first mental wellness platform designed exclusively for teppanyaki professionals. Our licensed therapists have all completed a minimum 40-hour immersive hibachi observation program so they understand, really understand, what it means to perform choreographed joy for a table of drunk strangers at 7:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. They won't tell you to set boundaries. They won't suggest mindfulness. They know you've been mindful of that same 12-inch grill surface for 9 years, and mindfulness is not the issue. Flipside offers 3 core programs. The first is the decompression session, a weekly 50-minute call where you are legally permitted to describe, in full detail, every table that has ever asked you to do the volcano twice. Our therapists are trained to absorb this without flinching. It is the only space in your life where you can say, a man named Gerald tried to catch the shrimp and it hit him in his glasses and he laughed like I had done something wonderful, and received the appropriate clinical response, which is, I know, and I'm so sorry. The second program is the Spatula Sabbath, a guided 48-hour retreat in a remote location with no open flames, no birthdays, no requests, and no Gerald. Just you, a therapist, and the slow process of remembering who you were before the paper hat. And finally, we have the exit strategy consultation. For the chef who is ready to ask the question they've been afraid to ask for 6 years, our vocational specialists will help you identify transferable skills, precision, performance under pressure, the ability to maintain a neutral expression while a 12-year-old asks if you can make the fire bigger, and translate them into a career that does not require you to entertain people while you cook their food. Flip side, because you've been feeding everyone else for long enough. Use code CoonSkin for your first month free and a complimentary weighted blanket that smells nothing like hibachi. Flip side, the flame goes out eventually. Make sure you're still there when it does. Really happy to be partnering with Flipside. They do great work. If any hibachi chefs or teppanyaki professionals are in the audience and listening, I would definitely check it out. All right, so we're first going to kick things off with stuff in the news. I do have a personal announcement to make, which is I ordered a magic kit. And this is a grown-up magic kit. And it actually arrived in the mail today. And I'm very excited about that. I think perhaps next episode I will do a trick on screen, but my plan is to go do magic for homeless people in the park. I think there's something wholesome about that. It's my way of giving back. I also think there's something undeniably magical, no pun intended, about the way Black people react to magic. And I think, as is obvious, and I don't think disrespectful, there is a preponderance of Black homeless people. So I'm very excited about that. Now let's get into some of the news. I talked maybe an episode or two ago about the U.S. strike. So obviously there's this Iran war that's waging in Israel. It is a mess. We've been lied about it. The destruction in Israel, the destruction of U.S. bases, the lack of forethought or planning Trump had, the likelihood that Israel actually drew us into this war. The reason why Trump went into this war is severalfold. He could have a messianic mindset about him, eschatological. I'm here to save the Israeli people. After Gaza, he proudly boasted about ending a 3,000-year-old conflict. He could be getting pressure, both in terms of compromising material that the Israelis have on him in the Epstein files, or the fact that, I don't know if you guys heard about this in the news, but you know those women who protest with the pink vagina hats on their head? Well, Trump went for dinner, and there was a group of them sitting at the restaurant. And that's like a no-no. And what that meant is someone got in touch with the restaurant, knew where the president was going to eat, and arranged for that group of people to sit down at the restaurant where Trump was supposedly going. And when Trump goes to eat at a restaurant, the Secret Service scopes it out weeks in advance. A reservation is made under an alias. No one knows that he's coming. That is like classified. So the fact that that group, pink protest or whatever, was there eating at the restaurant was almost an implicit threat. Someone was saying to Trump, we can get close to you. We can get close to you. And that is not something to just be written off. I mean, that is a serious breach of security. And there's also, as Marco Rubio said, the Israelis were threatening to bomb first. And Marco Rubio was on camera saying we had no choice but to strike now. Now, the interesting thing is, like, Tulsi Gabbard all last year was saying the Iranians they're not creating a nuclear bomb. There's a fatwa under the last Ali Khamenei, the guy who was killed, the supreme leader of Shia Islam. I think it's Shia. They had a fatwa, which is a religious law saying don't create nuclear bombs. They were not creating nuclear bombs. They were not on the verge of it. It's now clear because you don't hear U.S. politicians invoking that anymore because that narrative fell apart. This is not 2001 Iraq weapons of mass destruction anymore. You don't hear the political class talking about that because it's been ripped to shreds in real time. In real time. It was very clear this was an opportunistic move. And what's messed up about all of this is they bombed the Iranian negotiators when they were endeavoring on goodwill negotiations with the Israelis and the Americans. What kind of message did that send to the Iranians? We can't be trusted to negotiate in good faith. That's just our way for baiting you out and drawing you out. What message did we send in Iraq when we toppled Saddam? You better protect your regime. Same with Gaddafi, right? We had Gaddafi give up his nukes, and a couple months later, he was sodomized by his own people by having a bayonet shoved up his ass. What message does this send to dictators around the world or regimes? Don't give up your nuclear weapons. Don't give up your nuclear weapons. So it was a war of opportunism, and we're funding this war. I mean, we're giving Israel all our weapons, and they are at the same time waging a war in southern Lebanon. Isn't that a little insulting? I think so. So in the fog of all of this, basically what happened is there was an Iranian school with 150 schoolgirls, daughters of Iranian military brass, the IRGC, who were killed in a U.S. airstrike. People speculated it was Claude, right? It was an AI system. No, there was a human that launched this strike. Now, what is now being called into questioning, and the New York Times reports on this, U.S. at fault for strike on school in Iran. Outdated targeting data may have resulted in a mistaken missile strike, according to the ongoing military investigation, which undercuts President Trump's assertion that Iran could be to blame. Where are we getting this targeting data? Probably Israel. I don't hate Israel, but I'm American. Israel's acting in its own self-interest. We should be directing our ire at our political class. It's unproductive to be angry at Israel. You can find their actions crimes against humanity and reprehensible. The former interim president just went on Tucker Carlson last night and basically talked about all of this in no unclear terms. Israel's crimes against humanity. The problem here is I think Trump wants to get out of the Iran conflict, but Israel continues to do things that trap us in there. It's sunken cost fallacy. We're just about to fly the 86th Airborne out there, 5,000 additional soldiers, on top of the 8,000 we've already positioned on aircraft carriers and from, I think, Japan, Okinawa, we've moved them over. We might be in too deep, folks. And this is going to completely reset the world order. And you know what's happened? Is all our allies, the Emiratis, the Saudis, Oman, Qatar, whom we have security pacts with, we will guarantee your security in exchange for you selling your oil in US dollars. And in another good show of faith, the Saudis, for example, through their sovereign wealth fund, have invested hundreds of billions of dollars in US ventures. I mean, all this AI stuff in data centers is largely driven by Saudi money. And now they're like, you've completely left us hanging out to dry. We have the same thing with Japan and South Korea. South Korea doesn't have a military. We're their military. And now they're looking at how we've just abandoned our allies in favor of Israel in the Middle East, and they're thinking, how can we trust this? We have to arm ourselves. This stuff in Iran is so far-reaching, and it has such a gravitational effect. An effect of gravitas on the rest of global affairs to an extent I don't think we've yet realized. We are in real time losing our status as the global peacemaker. We've sided with Israel on, under international law, an unjust war. It wasn't a preeminent attack. It was an unjustified attack out of nowhere. Israel wasn't attacked first. It wasn't preeminent. It was opportunistic. Bibi Netanyahu said himself, I've been waiting to do this for 40 years. So they attacked the school, and the whole thing, it's just tragic because civilian casualties as a result of conflict are always tragic. I think in Gaza, it's been even more extreme. There have been more journalists killed in the conflict, the 3-year conflict in Gaza, than World War II, Vietnam, and the Iraq War combined. That's not an accident. The only journalists who can get in are ones escorted by the IDF. That's not normal for a war zone. And the fact that we've struck not only school children, but children of Iranian IRGC military brass. Talk about the fury that they will feel. The fury. Righteous fury. Righteous fury. And we get all this intel from Israel. Israel has a desk in the Pentagon. Mossad does. Why? The guy who was running the, I think, Iraq or Afghanistan desk during the early 2000s was IDF, a dual citizen. I mean, it makes you think, are we waging Israel's wars? It's a question I'm posing. And again, I don't hate Israel. I don't hate Jews at all. I love America, though. I'm American. And this is about holding our political class to account, holding Trump to account on the promises he made, which were to get rid of all the pedophiles in government. Hasn't been done. No new wars. Not only did we get a new war, we got a new war of biblical proportion. And I think Israel might try to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque. They've already tried to do it 5 times since 1967 with bombings, most notably the Jewish underground. And if the Al-Aqsa Mosque is destroyed, arguably the 3rd most holy site in Islam, we will have global religious war. Global religious war. It will topple regimes. I think the Middle East will likely destroy itself. Remember, I was telling you about that letter of Albert Pike, the 33rd degree Freemason. This has all been foretold. But we can't fret, okay? Again, it's about, I know it's like sort of ironic to say that after saying all that. It's good to stay informed, but remember, there are things to be grateful for. Keep your water still. Reality is but a projection of the subconscious. The next story I want to talk about, and this stuff is pissing me off. I've talked about these unregulated gambling markets, Kalshi, what's the other one? Polymarket, Predict It. Just 5 minutes before Trump's announcement to halt the attacks on Iran, massive trades reportedly hit the market. In one move, $1.5 billion in S&P 500 futures was bought, while $192 million in oil futures were sold. These orders were 4 to 6 times larger than anything else at the time. The traders seemingly made huge gains. This is disgusting. Now, I think we can all accept that there's some level of grift that goes on in the executive echelon, the political echelon. It just is. Our Congress people grift. It's disappointing, but it's sort of it's a facet of political systems. The real frustration for me, and it actually pisses me off, is when our political class and leaders don't seem to be reflecting the will of the people, and they're grifting. And I'll be the first to say, Trump has had a spectacular record while in office of grifting. The Trump coin, the real estate deals, Jared Kushner in the Middle East with all these real estate deals in his, I think, investment fund, quid pro quo stuff. And now all the insider trading. What the hell is going on? What the hell is going on? This, if this isn't the Trump family, it's a close associate. And it really pisses me off. In the next news, OnlyFans owner Leonid Radvinsky dies at 43 following a secret cancer battle. I wish him well. Taking 20% of women honestly degrading themselves on camera. I'm not hating on women. I mean, the market was created. Okay, that's your prerogative. It's actually none of my business. I'm not going to judge. But I will objectively say that is self-degrading behavior, and it rots your soul. The most sacred thing for a woman is her sexuality. There are a lot of great things about women, no doubt. But spiritually and energetically, but really spiritually, the woman has the womb and her sexuality, her secret garden, the force of birthing life. And to sell that, it does destroy your soul. And this guy created it, and he got cancer and died at 43. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Let's see what else we have on the menu today. Before we get to the videos I want to show, we actually are going to do a little word from our sponsor. We're going to do a little word from our sponsor. You guys from last episode might remember the toque. Well, this is a word from our sponsor, the toque as well, but this is the Junior Sentinel edition. Folks, we talk a lot on the show about the energy war. We talk about the siphons, the leeches, and the spectral entities that want to drain your drive before you even get out of bed. But what about our sons? While your adolescent boy is navigating middle school, he is also navigating a battlefield of the unseen. He is a walking battery of untapped potential. And to the Jezebel spirits and the low-frequency succubi of the ether, he's a 5-star buffet. They don't want his lunch money. They want his vitality. The Taylor Moore Show is proud to introduce the toque, Junior Sentinel. Based on the same dreamcatcher sacred geometry used by high-level esoteric elites, the Junior Sentinel is a discrete micro-lattice canopy designed to be draped directly over the crown of your son's developing penis. Think of it as a spiritual firewall for his most precious energetic output. Woven with high conductivity silver thread and infused with pressurized Himalayan salt, the toque creates a localized sanctity zone. It filters out the spectral drainage attempts while he sleeps, ensuring that his life force energy stays exactly where it belongs, inside his own bioorganic battery. Does your son seem tired? Is he losing the competitive edge in junior varsity? He's likely being leaked by interdimensional entities who thrive on adolescent ambition. Don't let the succubus win. Shield the tip of his future. The toque, because a boy's energy is his destiny. Use code CoonSkin for a free purification pouch and a 20% discount on the father-son Twin Shield bundle. The toque. Secure the source, own the future. We have a couple customer testimonials, 2 of them I'd like to read. Linda V. from Sedona, Arizona says, I noticed a persistent shadow in the corner of his bedroom during the last 2 full moons, and I knew the siphons were circling. My boy was becoming a buffet for low-frequency entities. I draped the Junior Sentinel on him, and the shift was instantaneous. He woke up with so much drive density that he actually finished his chemistry project and started a small hedge fund in the same afternoon. The silver mesh lattice is impenetrable. The succubi in our zip code are officially starving. Thanks for that. Derek S. from Hartford, Connecticut says, I was skeptical at first, but then I saw the spectral heat map of my son's bedroom. He was leaking vitality like a cracked pipe. We installed the Junior Sentinel, and now he's so focused he doesn't even look at his phone anymore. Wow. He just stares at the horizon and talks about conquering the physical plane. It's a bit intense for a Tuesday, but at least I know his life force is locked down. Thank you, Derek, and thank you for writing in about that. That's super encouraging. So, folks, now I just want to show 2 videos from the internet that I think you'll all like. And again, buckle the F up, because after those 2 videos and a word from our other sponsor, I'm going to talk about one of the craziest stories ever. I mean, ever. If I didn't have all the details to it, I honestly wouldn't blame you for not believing it. All right, so let's take a look here. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, 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 dun.
Quadruple amputee cornhole champion now facing...
Okay, fix the volume so that doesn't feedback all strange.
Listen
up.
You have wanted a war again.
That's the wrong video.
Quadruple amputee cornhole champion now...
Excuse me. Technical difficulties. Should call my Indian friend.
Quadruple amputee cornhole champion now facing murder charges for allegedly shooting and killing someone in his vehicle. The incident happened in Maryland before the alleged shooter then left to Virginia. Eyewitness News reporter Mark Quadriplegic is in studio with the shocking details on this. Mark?
Yeah, Michelle, good evening. The headline alone is not something you hear every day. The man charged in the deadly shooting is a quadruple amputee who was driving a car as the shooting happened. He is 27-year-old Dayton James Weber, seen here in this mugshot. He's been in the spotlight before, but for much different reasons. Weber was featured by ESPN a few years ago, highlighting his success as a...
Hang on. For those of you watching the video, we'll keep playing it, but if you just saw his cornhole throw, he looked like he was cheating a little bit. He crossed the line. Okay, I get it. He's got no arms and legs. But still, if you're going to claim to be the quadriplegic champion of cornhole, you better play by the rules, Buster.
Competitive cornhole champion. Now, after the incident last night, he is a murder suspect accused of fatally shooting.
Oh my God, that's Sally. Do you see that? Let's rewind that a little bit.
Now, after the incident last night, he is a murder suspect accused of fatally shooting a passenger in his car while driving through a small town in Maryland. Local authorities alerted by 2 witnesses who were passengers in the back seat, revealing a well-known name.
Stories out there about what he is.
Okay, well, that is, if there was a sign that the simulation is breaking, this is it. That there's a quadriplegic on trial for homicide with a gun. And I actually found his Twitter here, where you can see, because I was wondering, how the hell does a quadriplegic shoot a gun? Well, folks, you're about to find out.
Let me get your phone.
Wizardry. If you can pull the trigger on a gun and you're quadriplegic, are you really quadriplegic, dude? He's quad fraud maxing. Quad fraud maxing for sure. Well, that's pretty interesting. And listen, here at the Coon Skin Nation, we'll be following this story diligently. So stay tuned in. And if you're enjoying the pod, I need you right now to follow, rate, like, comment, share, subscribe, support the show, support the movement. Let's get this word out. More people need to know about hibachi chefs. It is not being talked about enough. If this is my legacy, so be it. The world needs to know about hibachi chefs. I'm not fucking around. Thank you. The final story, the final video I want to show, it's a little dystopian. This is of I've talked a lot about AI on this program. A lot about AI girlfriends. More about AI girlfriends. Talked a little bit about AI girlfriends. I've also talked about AI girlfriends. But seriously, we've talked about AI weaponry, the idea that AI is really a disincarnate Sumerian ancient god, which is a really fun thing to bring up at a dinner party or like Easter brunch for sure. This new AI system this is a video of a surveillance camera at a coffee shop, and the owner installed it, and what it does is it tracks in real time both the workers, specifically how many cups of coffee they filled and their time, their efficiency doing it, and how long each customer has been in the store. Take a look at this. Olga with 3 cups. You're fired. She's gone. What is Olga doing? I mean, I was going to rip on this system, but your coworkers, Olga, are at 20 cups and 10 cups. You're at 3 cups and taking photos like this is some kind of a fucking joke. Hunker down. Pour the cups, Olga. All right, so that is absolutely horrifying. Absolutely horrifying. I'd like to install that in my son's room and track how many times he jerks off during puberty. We're going to set a record, son. We're going to set a record. I was talking to one of my best friends on the phone, and this is just a random aside. We're talking about guys who go to Thailand. And like, picture a guy who goes to Thailand and someone's like, yeah, but like they're a bunch of lady boys. And he shoots a look and he goes, that's the whole fucking point, son. That's the whole, you don't get it. But there are lady boys in Thailand, son. You don't get it. That's the whole point. Spring training. Thailand is spring training. Anywho, changing gears here. Again, buckle up because we have this story coming up, folks. This story coming up. Okay, I think we're just going to get right into the story. Right into the story. And this story, in all seriousness, is a little more serious. And this was about 3 years ago when I went to my first rehab. I'm now sober and doing well, but for a couple years there, that was not the case. So 3 years ago, I was at this rehab, and I've told this story, I think, on one of my earlier episodes, but I'm going to rehash it because I have new listeners, and I think it's something that needs to be shared. I was at this rehab in Tucson, Arizona, and it was a really nice rehab, but you get to the rehab, and you're sort of triaged for 3 days where you're detoxed, they test your piss. I remember the head doctor tested my piss, and he was like, you lit up like a Christmas tree. I was like, what can I say? What can I say? So anyways, I was there for 3 days. And in those 3 days, you're sort of getting to know people, yada, yada. And one of the people in my wing was this Japanese kid. And he was probably 24 years old. And he was kind of obscure. He was like mid-transition. He seemed like a guy, but he had a saggy set of A cups. That he did. I'm just telling it like I'm just shooting from the hip, telling it like it is. So I was actually there for probably 5 days, and I was talking to this kid, and I would sort of eat meals with him, et cetera, et cetera. And I quickly noticed there was something really strange about this kid. We'll call him Chris. And Chris at some moments would present as a fairly well-adjusted 24-year-old boy. I mean, a little bit reclusive, a little bit to himself, but he could engage conversationally on the level of a 24-year-old. But then there were times where, like the flip of a switch, he would assume this sort of infantilized state of mind, or he'd be watching cartoons, Studio Ghibli, on the TV with his stuffed animals in a blanket. And it like wasn't a bit. He was the Chris I had been talking to was 24 and well-adjusted, all of a sudden became totally inaccessible. And this was basically like a toddler watching cartoons on the TV. Giggling, sort of hugging his stuffed animals, like really strange, but like there was nothing, it was earnest. That was sort of the weirdest part, is there was nothing faux about this. And so he'd be watching cartoons at night, but then it'd be like time for bedtime. And this wouldn't always happen at bedtime. It would sometimes happen during the day, this neck switch. He would all of a sudden become hypersexualized and like begging me to come into bed with him in a very inappropriate and weird way. Still with like the temperament of a child. And it was like really jarring. The whole thing was really weird. And so I got to talking with him at lunch one day. And we were eating lunch, and he was like, I want to show you something after lunch. And this was when he was like his well-adjusted, fairly well-adjusted 24-year-old self, where I felt like I could access him. And I was talking to the real Chris. And so after lunch, we sort of go outside, and it's just the two of us. And Coon Skin Nation, he pulls up his shorts to reveal no fewer than 1,000 razor blade cuts on his upper legs. It shook me. It was so jarring and like violent and disturbing. Like the image of it, it was crazy. And it did not look like self-harm. And if it was like, remember Da Vinci Code, that guy who whips himself, is like a glutton for pain and punishes himself? It would be like that level of like weird. So it was so weird. And Chris tells me, he says, I didn't do this. I was trafficked by the Christian Scientists for several years, taken from hotel to hotel. I said, what did your parents do about this? His parents were immigrants and sort of disengaged and entrusted the children's program with the Christian Scientists to sort of take him on retreats and things like that. And he said he was trafficked from hotel to hotel. These cuts were so him and the other kids could be brought from hotel to hotel or in public and wouldn't arouse suspicion. And then he was brought to hotel rooms where he was kept in dog cages, ate rat poop, and was forced to harm other children on video and watch other children kill each other. And there were powerful men that would come by and sodomize these children, one after the other, rape them in the anus. And I know this is a little graphic, but it needs to be shared. It is not morally superior to shy away from this and pretend like you're better than it. It doesn't make you a better person. In fact, I think it makes you a coward. And they would film something called snuff porn. I'd never heard of this. I heard about like that stuff, Red Room on the dark web, where prostitutes would be kidnapped, it'd be live streamed, and sick people would donate money to have a prostitute, cut off her finger, do this, do that, cut off her breast. And snuff porn was filmed with this kid. And I later got out of rehab and researched into this, and I realized what he had was something called, as it used to be called, multiple personality disorder, or as it's called in the DSM now, dissociative identity disorder. Now, I fell down a rabbit hole with this stuff. Through a couple angles, I was steeped in that. But the first thing to note is dissociative identity disorder is not something that just psychologically happens. It only happens as a result of sustained psychological, often psychosexual torture, where the child, typically under the age of 9, before the psyche has fully developed a sense of self, is subjected to so much psychosexual torture that the brain, which is a beautiful machine and very intelligent and capable, it's the best supercomputer out there, in an effort to preserve itself, will fracture the psyche and create an alter personality that is distinctly separate from the one that has been subjected to the psychosexual abuse. That and in compartmentalizing that psychosexual trauma, the human body is then able to still eat breakfast, go to school, etc. It ends up being a disaster later on. But that's what this was. That's what this was. And I knew it in my body and soul that when I read upon dissociative identity disorder, I was reading the truth of what had happened to Chris. Now, unfortunately, dissociative identity disorder has been leveraged to malicious ends. You've probably all heard of Project MKUltra. Well, there was Project MKUltra had a bunch of different sub-projects beneath it, one of which was Project Monarch. Stranger Things is an offshoot of that as well. And what Project Monarch sought to do was basically install alter personalities in people by methodically and systematically developing a method of subjecting someone to psychosexual torture such that their psyche fragments in a way that is defined and deliberate. And this is called programming alters, programming alter personalities. And there are a couple different, and this stuff sounds so fantastic and fabulous, but you can look into it. There's primary documentation about this stuff. You can program a couple different alters. You can program what's called the beta sex slave program. And these are oftentimes women, and they program sex slaves. Honestly, you've seen the butterfly imagery with Britney Spears, Amanda Bynes. That's all relics of the beta sex slave program. Don't believe me? Look it up for yourself. And I'll try and put some sources in the bio, but I fear that might get this video flagged. You can also program alters that hold information. And the brilliant thing about this is I'm not praising it, but ingenious thing is the alters don't know one another. It's so definitively and regimentally compartmentalized. And you can program the alters such that a person who has a bunch of different alters in a honeycomb formation is what it's called, the alters are switched by either a sound, a code phrase, or a light. Remember that Marvel movie that came out, I think, last year, where it was like the Secret Service guys would get a message on their phone of like light and sound, and all of a sudden they would switch into these assassins that tried to kill the president? That's it. But they put this in this is going to sound conspiratorial. It sort of is, but like a lot of, as we know with the Epstein stuff, a lot of these conspiracies are true, and I'm going to tie this into the Epstein stuff because it's also connected to satanic ritual abuse. These alters don't know one another, so you can program an alter that holds information. You can program an alter that's a Manchurian candidate. You can program an alter that's an assassin. You can also program an alter that's called a suicide alter that's triggered not by an instructor's or a handler's code phrase, a light that's shown, a sound that's made, but by the victim going and seeking psychiatric help for their affliction. And that triggers the suicide alter where they effectively self-destruct. It's very sad. The problem with this is information on this is disparate. Now, there are entire clinical practices dedicated to satanic ritual abuse because that's where we also see this a lot. Satanic ritual abuse, these satanic families employ this methodology to fragment the psyches of children in their lineages and then put them into positions of power. Look at Emmanuel Macron, president of France. His wife is a man. I mean, Candace Owens proved this. Whatever you think of her, it's irrefutable. They tried to sue the journalist in France who broke this, and he won. They've threatened to sue Candace Owens, but haven't succeeded. If she was really slandering them, she would be ground into a powder, legally speaking. And this is what the Satanists believe in. This is why the transgender stuff was in the Epstein emails. Baphomet, their goat-headed transgender god. This is what this is energetically. It's about inverting the divine order, taking God's creation, whatever you think of God, right? But again, these people who are educated, well-funded, and successful all believe in this stuff unironically. So just keep an open mind. Maybe there is something to this. Epstein was in talks with that doctor from that PhD from Duke about pushing transgender ideology, how girls with cocks are hot, how they ought to be pushing the ideology on people as young as 3. It's about inverting the order of God. It's why they kill babies, because babies are uncorrupted by the world. They are the closest thing to divinity, to the divine order. So if you kill that, it's a direct affront to that. This is what Satanism energetically is all about. And it is all energy. I mean, the world is more mystical. And if you haven't caught on to that now with everything going on, with the fact that a quadriplegic just got indicted for murder, you don't think there's something a little Harry Potter and Hogwarts about that? You're not sucking the marrow out of life. You're really not, because there's a lot of beauty to be had with that too. But again, there's polarity to everything. There's, where there's the most depraved spiritual forces, there are the goodest, and the spiritual forces filled with the most light. Everything is balanced. That's a Hermetic principle. And so these satanic families practice this, and I got really down this rabbit hole. There are whole books I downloaded off the dark web, just out of curiosity, about the methodology for inducing this split of the psyches in children. It's a very real thing. And so you have all these Epstein emails that came out, and on the ground level, it's about elites abusing children. But on a level beneath that, it's about satanic ritual abuse. In a level beneath that, it's about Epstein compromising and contracting with all the Nobel laureates to try and develop some sort of a master race. I just realized my phone wasn't plugged in for the first 52 minutes of this broadcast, so hopefully there wasn't too much lag. Darn it. Whatever, we roll with the punches. So anyways, this satanic ritual abuse is the second level, and then the genetic modification is the third level. Epstein, we don't hear about the Zorro Ranch in New Mexico, the birthing farms, the Epstein trying to spread his seed. There was something a lot more sinister going on. And the media seems to just be throwing us the bone of like, yeah, it was just about a couple of sicko pedophiles. Nothing to see here. And of course, there's the espionage angle here too, across all of this, which is we're not talking about enough, which might relate to the conflict in Iran and why we're even there. Just something to think about. All right, so that's my story on that. A little preview of satanic ritual abuse. It's pretty creepy stuff. All right, we have a word from one of our sponsors, and then we're going to close things out with a couple thoughts on fear. So this is from one of our partners, The Long Game. The Long Game Legacy, Gratitude Through Gaslighting. Does your child complain about the Wi-Fi speed? Do they roll their eyes when you ask them to set the table? They don't need a timeout. Coon Skin Nation, they need a total loss of identity. The Taylor Moore Show is proud to partner with the Long Game Legacy. We specialize in high-fidelity, multi-year pedagogical pranks. When you call us, we stage a full-scale state removal event. SAG-certified actors posing as social workers and a new family will arrive at your home and take your child away. For the next 18 months to 2 years, your child will live with a new family, usually in a tech-free cabin in rural Nebraska, where they will learn the value of hard labor, early mornings, and a complete lack of luxury. Then, on their next major birthday, we'll jump out of the bushes with a camera crew and yell, Gotcha! The look of pure, unadulterated relief as they realize they aren't actually a Nebraska farmhand is the greatest gift a parent can give. They'll never complain about a lukewarm dinner ever again. The long game legacy, because perspective is the ultimate prank. Use code CoonSkin for a free I Survived My Other Family t-shirt and a 10% discount on the inevitable psychiatric bills that follow. The long game. They'll thank you eventually. Couple testimonials. Sloan V from Scottsdale, Arizona. I used the code CoonSkin and got the psychiatric bill discount, which was a lifesaver. My son had reached a level of entitlement that was clinically unreachable until the long game stepped in. He spent 18 months in a windowless cabin thinking the internet had been outlawed by a new global regime. When he found out it was just a pedagogical prank, the relief was so intense, he actually apologized for rolling his eyes at me in 2024. He's still a bit jumpy around white vans, but his work ethic is incredible. Thank you, Sloan. I'm sure some of our viewers felt that was really helpful to hear. Grant W. from Austin, Texas said, the production value on the state removal event was top tier. The actors playing the social workers were so convincing that my neighbors actually started a candlelight vigil. My daughter spent the next 2 years thinking her name was Ruth and learning how to salt cure venison. The gotcha reveal on her 16th birthday was the highlight of my decade. She's much more helpful around the house now, mostly because she's constantly scanning the tree line for hidden cameras. 10 out of 10. Well, that just warms my heart to hear. So, folks, I want to close on something that I think is really important. I think, I've thought about a lot, particularly on my journey of sobriety and recovery and just becoming the man I am today. The man before you wearing the coonskin hat, bringing the sort of reporting and intellectual vigor to the world of hibachi and teppanyaki grill that I feel was an untapped intellectual interest in the public domain. But I want to talk about fear. Fear, the trap of fear, the prison of fear, the fact that fear for so long governed my life. You know, fear is the mind killer. They said that in Dune. Frank Herbert actually wrote that, and it was in Dune. And I've been turning it over for a while now because I think it's the most accurate 3-word diagnosis of the human condition ever committed to paper. Not fear is bad, not fear is the enemy, fear is the mind killer. It doesn't hurt your body. It doesn't take your money. It goes straight for the operating system. It gets in there and it starts rewriting the code until the version of you that's running it is a smaller, dimmer, more manageable version of the one that was there before it arrived. And here's the thing about fear that nobody tells you. It's a mile long and an inch deep. Every fear you have, the social ones, the existential ones, the ones that wake you up at 3 a.m. and sit heavily on your chest, when you actually walk toward them, when you actually put your hands on them and push, they have almost no structural integrity. They are enormous from a distance. They are tissue paper up close. The size of the fear is almost always inversely proportional to the actual danger. The bigger it looks, the less there is when you get there. But we don't walk toward it. We stand at the edge and we extrapolate. We build the fear out in our minds until it's load-bearing, until it's the thing holding the ceiling up. And we start to organize our entire lives around not disturbing it. Here's the other thing I want to say, and this is the part that took me personally longer to understand. When you're afraid of being yourself in front of other people, and most of us are, in one way or another, most of the time, I want you to consider what that fear is actually made of. You're afraid of being seen, afraid of being judged, afraid that if people see the real version of you, the unperformed, unoptimized, the actual you, something bad will happen. They'll reject you. They'll think less of you. They'll see the thing you've been trying to hide since you were 12 years old, and they'll confirm your worst suspicion about yourself. But here's the problem. Here's the misleading element with that fear. There are no others. Every face you see is you, wearing a different mask, living a different story, carrying a different set of wounds. But fundamentally, at the level that actually matters, the same being looked back at itself through different eyes. The person across from you is a version of you that took a different path. The stranger on the street is you with different coordinates. Every human being you've ever been afraid of judging you is you, in a costume, doing the exact same performance you are. Think about an animal seeing its reflection for the first time. It flinches. It backs up. Sometimes it attacks. It cannot process what it's looking at because it doesn't recognize itself. That's what social fear is. That's what the anxiety of being seen actually is. It's you looking at you and not recognizing the face. Hiding because someone's watching is just hiding from yourself. And once you actually feel that, not intellectually, but in your body, in your heart, the fear changes shape. Because what are you protecting? What is the secret you're keeping from the only person who's there? Who's here? You're always only ever in your own presence. Every room you walk into, every conversation you have, every moment you spend performing a version of yourself you think is more acceptable. You're doing it for an audience that is made of the same material you are. Mark Twain said courage is not the absence of fear. It's the resistance to it, the mastery of it. And I think that's exactly right. But I want to add something. Mastery doesn't mean the fear goes away. It's always going to be there. It means you stop letting it have a vote. You feel it. You acknowledge it. You say, yep, that's real. I feel that. It's loud right now. And then you do the thing anyway. You walk into the room. You say the true thing. You show someone the actual version of yourself and you let the chips fall. Not because you're fearless, because you've done the math and you've realized the fear was always about a threat that doesn't exist. The mile-long fear, inch deep. I spent a long time being afraid of being seen, afraid of what people would think if they knew what my life actually looked like up close, behind closed doors. And what I know now, what I know from being on the other side of a lot of it, is that the fear cost me more than the thing I was afraid of ever could have done. The exposure never killed me. The hiding almost did. So, whatever you're carrying, whatever room you've been standing outside of, whatever version of yourself you've been keeping in a drawer because you're not sure the world is ready for it. The world is made of people who are doing the exact same thing, waiting for permission, waiting to be seen first, waiting for someone else to go first and survive it. My challenge to you all, go first. Until next Thursday, stay curious.